I'm going to be sharing how to mix flesh tones in acrylics for portraits. And I know that so many people have been requesting this video, so I'm really excited to share this with you today. And I think mixing flesh tones is a lot of fun, and I know it can be scary for some people or just really difficult. So I want to help make that easier and just help you guys have a really fun time painting portraits. So I have this portrait already started, and this is kind of like an ink watercolor background, and I'm going to be working with acrylics on top of it. So this is my source, and as you can see, made her a lot more colorful than the source. But I'm going to show you how to mix these flesh tones and kind of add your own twist to it. The mistake that I see a lot of artists do is they have different browns on their palette and they just mix brown and white together and create these different flesh tones, mostly using browns. And that's how you get really boring or kind of lifeless portraits. And sometimes the skin tone looks a little bit dirty. So I'm going to really share the secrets on how to avoid that. The key is to have a lot of colors on your palette. And we say this for almost every lesson we teach. You gotta have a full palette of colors to really have a masterpiece. So don't just have a few colors on your palette. Use all the colors, even this bright green I'll use today. First, I'm going to glaze her skin, like all these white parts. I'm just gonna glaze that with burnt sienna, and I'm just mixing some water with it. I just kind of wanna stain her skin so I'm not working on plain white. So as always, you wanna work from dark to light. And after you have all your transparents in and you're starting to move into opaques, or let's say you're doing an alla prima where you're just starting on a white canvas, you want to work dark to light. So save your highlights for the very end. Okay, so I have a lot of her darks in there already, but I want to just refine that a little bit more. So I am going to mix some blue with green. And the key with portraits, I think, is to have a lot of colors mixed into your paint so you're not just sticking with those more traditional colors. So I am just adding some darks in her eyes, mostly. If you just squint at your source, then you can really see where your darks are. So I recommend doing that. So the key to mixing flesh tones is mixing in complements. Instead of just mixing brown with everything, you want to create your own browns by mixing complementary colors. So that's taking the opposites. So if you take like a green and a red, then you can create your own kind of, it'll either be a gray or a brown. And grays are a beautiful shade to add into any portrait. So don't be afraid to use some of these grays. And actually in this portrait, there's a lot of kind of more muted tones. And so by mixing complements, you're gonna have a much fresher looking palette instead of just mixing brown into your whites. So if I take orange and blue, I'm getting this kind of greenish color. And if it's too green, then you add the complement. So I'm adding some red. And now you have this beautiful, rich brown color to use in the skin. So personally, I like to add kind of the peachier, like pink, more expressive colors, but those pink, rosy, peachy colors into the cheeks. So that's like a really great spot to add those more feminine colors. Okay, so let's mix some more complements. I have this purple, I'm gonna mix some yellow. There's another beautiful brown. And you could add a little white. You have a nice flesh tone. And to me, that's a little bit too brown, so I would like to add a little pink to it. So you just want to kind of slightly change your color every time you're putting down a brush stroke. That's how you have a really dynamic looking portrait, and it's not going to be boring and you're not going to have the same colors everywhere. Also, in addition, like, you can just have the pure color with white mixed in and you'll have this really bright, beautiful color to work with. I like to add those peach tones to the cheeks, so that's a great spot. A little to the forehead. And yellow ochre and raw sienna are great colors to mix into your flesh tones. And you don't want to just have them plain because they're just a little too brown. So I like to mix it into just a little pink and you get this really nice skin tone. So if your face is getting, like, let's say a little too peachy or too pink, then you want to add the complement. So that means, since her face is kind of on the orangey side or it's just too much pink in there, I think I'm going to add a little bit of green. So just a slight hint of green. And you can mix that into your flesh tones. So that color next to the bright pink really works. And you want to be careful with green though, because if you have too much green in a face, then the person will just look sick and it will just, not look good. So be careful with the green, but it can be a really great color if you have so much pink going on in the face. Any color that you're kind of seeing in your source, you want to exaggerate on your canvas. So down here in her jaw, I can see there's some purples. So I'm just exaggerating that and adding some purples in there. So sometimes if you want to just have like a super bright expressive spot, I'll put like a bright pink on the cheek just in one place and it just looks really beautiful. So don't be afraid to use the colors in an expressive way. And you can also use let's say this bright green, you can use that as a highlight, a really bright highlight on the face. So I'm happy with this as a stopping point for today. As you can see, mixed a lot of different skin tones on my palette. So your palette should have tons of different colors, and use all your colors. So use the greens and blues and mix your complements together to create those really beautiful dynamic flesh tones, and do that instead of just mixing browns into your white or other colors. So create your own browns by mixing the complementary colors together. And as you can see, I added some really bright spots on the parts of the face that are really standing out, like the cheekbone, for example, or the lips, or the chin, forehead, nose. You can put brighter colors and be more expressive. So the cheeks are personally my favorite spot to be more expressive, and I just added this marker here to add this little bright pink spot. The lips, I added some bright pinks, and right here on her cheekbone I added light green. So lime green can be a really fun color to use in a portrait, and same with this blue color. If you just mix some white into it, you can get this really bright blue, and it can make a great highlight. So don't be afraid to use those bright colors. Let's see, I'm gonna add green somewhere, maybe right here. Just a little green. So that really adds a lot. And especially with acrylics, you can be more expressive, and then if you do oil on top of it, you can tone it down a little bit more. But the same rules apply for oil. You want to have all your colors out and just have fun mixing all these different flesh tones. So the key is just have lots of colors, don't mix brown and white together, and you'll have a great looking portrait. So I hope you enjoyed this lesson and this inspires you to just start adding more colors into your portraits, and I hope that this gave you the confidence now to start mixing more flesh tones.